Okay, so I've got a question for you. Uh, and it's really just why do we feel as the iPhone is premium? And I really do think there is a couple different reasons. And honestly, like it might sound a little bit crazy, I get it. But it's also kind of a psychological thing. And here's kind of what I mean. So I've sort of narrowed it down into like three ish key points for why I sort of feel like the iPhone feels premium, to everybody. Like when you think of an iPhone, like what do you think? Because for me personally, I sort of imagine the iPhone as just the expensive device. And granted, like I know that's not completely true. Samsung, for example, their S24 Ultra at its base price is more expensive than the iPhone at its base price. Well, the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But either way, so it's not the most expensive anymore. But the reasons I feel like we sort of associate the iPhone with expensive is number one, the price. A lot of Apple devices are very pricey. I do think that that is a given. Uh, the regular iPhone 15 is a 60 hertz display uh, in 2024 for $800, right? That's expensive. The Apple Vision Pro is Apple's first headset. It's $3,500. That's expensive. But there's lots of things that like the Mac Pro, thankfully it's a little more efficient now. It's a little less expensive, but you could used to pay $60,000, $65,000 for a Mac Pro not that long ago. But this kind of ties us into our second key point here, which for me is actually like the build quality. And I feel like that's definitely sort of it. You can tell, like, the price is at least going somewhere. Because most Apple devices are definitely over engineered. They're expensive and they're pretty. They're always built with nice materials, titanium, glass, even the aluminum feels premium. And so, you're never missing out when it comes to sort of the material it's built from. And lastly, I feel like value-wise, the ecosystem is one of the best out there. Like, if not the best. And it's just because there are so many devices and accessories that just work together and they complement each other so well. Now, an Apple Watch works terrible with any other device except the iPhone. Funny enough, it doesn't even work with an iPad. So if you have an iPhone and you get an Apple Watch, they work amazing together. You can do all kinds of awesome stuff with it. But as soon as you start getting out of that garden, you kind of tiptoe over the wall, that's when a whole lot of other stuff happens and it no longer works as well. So yeah, I just want to talk about like, is the iPhone worth the money? Like when you think of expensive, should you be thinking of the iPhone? Well, let's start off by talking about like some of the features iPhone is known for. iMessage and FaceTime. I know a lot of people have heard about it. It's popular, right? Everyone uses iMessage and FaceTime. Well, I guess not everyone. The people that use iPhone use iMessage and FaceTime. But it's one of those things where it just works seamlessly through every Apple device. So ecosystem. The apps are designed well, and so they're easy to use. We might be getting some redesigns here in iOS 18, fingers crossed. But they're designed beautifully. They're easy to use. As a matter of fact, you can even send people that use Android like iMessage links. Yeah, kind of an interesting thing you could do. But if you wanted to like FaceTime your friend, I mean, all you gotta do is just send them a link, and there you go. You can FaceTime them just like that. So although it's not as easy, you still can use FaceTime, and I feel like that sort of makes people realize, okay, wait, I like FaceTime and I want it to work better for me, so let me get an iPhone. That way I can use FaceTime more. And I think that's definitely kind of a bit of reasoning, right? But essentially, it's not much different than other apps, right? iMessage is very similar to WhatsApp or Instagram DMs, just with a couple little extra Apple features sprinkled in, like, message reactions and stuff like that. all your, you have a whole app store full of iMessage apps, which is interesting, I will say. And then, like, even FaceTime is not much different. Like, you could sort of achieve a very similar experience through Instagram calls. You can basically FaceTime through Instagram. And so you're really just doing it for the Apple way. The cool, like, FaceTime reactions where you can, like, put your thumb up and stuff. All cool stuff. Okay, so this kind of brings us to issues that I have with the iPhone. Things that I would change if I could. And number one is how locked down everything is, right? Apple is not known for customization. There's a lot, now they've gotten better. Over the years, they definitely have gotten better. But there's a lot that you cannot change, and it bothers me. I like to be able to change things. If I have an option to change it, I probably will. I don't like having things always set the way the creator intended for it to be set, right? I want to change things up a little bit. And so just with the iPhone being so locked down, yes, technically you can download apps off of the App Store now if you live in the European Union. I said that so messed up, I'm sorry. But yeah, you can change it. Sideloading is now available, which is awesome. That is a step in the right direction. But, not for everybody. And so, I'm in America, so it's a lot harder to get extra things that, you could do on an Android phone easy peasy. You just cannot do that on an iPhone. Now, this next point sort of relates back to when I was talking about iMessage and FaceTime. And that is that, yeah, iMessage and FaceTime is not available on other platforms. Now, I can definitely get away with the not having FaceTime. Like, it really doesn't matter. I can still call people because it is an iPhone and it still calls people. But iMessage, honestly, everyone I talk to is on iMessage. So for me, switching to Android means I would have to, like, find a new way to talk to everybody. Because everyone else has an iPhone, right? We're all in the Apple ecosystem together, and so when one of us gets out, it ruins the group chats. Like, it's hard to call people or make group FaceTime calls. It's just not as easy. And I think that's really sort of Apple's point here. It's just not as easy. Stick with iPhone. Now, this last one here is kind of a given, but it's really just that you can't change software. Now, obviously, you can't just change your iPhone to run Android software. I mean, maybe that's something you could do in the future, but I definitely, right now, don't see it happening. But, maybe instead of changing software from iOS to Android, you changed it from iOS to a more opened up version of iOS where you could do the things you want, Instead, because you can jailbreak, right? Jailbreaking is essentially like getting features for your iPhone that you would not have the ability to get prior. And so you can jailbreak your device. I just don't like the risks that could come with jailbreaking, and there's plenty of videos on it if you want to know how to do it, or if you want to know why you shouldn't do it. So, there's tons on YouTube. But for me personally, jailbreaking is not an option, so I'm not really looking to do that. So at this point, we've talked about a lot, right? We have kind of covered why iPhone sort of is the way it is, why people associate it with being expensive or premium, and stuff like that. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about is a couple good things. Because the iPhone, I believe, is great, I do want to cover a couple small things which I love. So number one, they're a big brand with amazing products. That's obvious. They're a multi-trillion-dollar company. They know what they're doing, and they've obviously been very successful at it. They've made a lot of money, and they make really good feeling products. But they also get the job done. Like, the iPhone calls like any other phone. It texts technically like any other phone could technically text. And it does things that all phones can do. It can download apps, games. You have most of like Google's apps on there. Like, you still can do everything you could with an iPhone, you could with an Android phone. Just, it sort of feels like Android is a bit more in a lot of different categories. And that's sort of just kind of how I feel like it is, to be honest. Now, one spot where I do definitely feel like Apple is very well in is hardware and software being paired together, being optimized. Apple makes their own processors, Apple makes their own software, and so when you put it together, it makes for an optimized, amazing experience. Now, software has not been that optimized lately. I've noticed a lot of bugs and issues and stuff like that, so it is not ideal, but usually it's pretty good, right? Battery life is usually pretty good. People can stop with the jokes about Apple having terrible battery life. They really don't anymore. Uh, and software is pretty well most of the time. Hardware is pretty amazing most of the time. And so when you put them together, it really just does make for a fantastic experience. So I believe for my personal needs, the iPhone is totally worth it. Yeah, it has some ups and downs, but so does every other device, and I've just sort of built up such a big ecosystem that involves Apple. It's really hard to kind of step away from that at this point. So it just depends, right? It really depends on kind of what you need for it to be either a good or bad purchase. But that's really about been it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell as it helps me out a ton. The channel's been growing a lot lately. We are almost to 1,000 subscribers, like less than half to go. We're getting there, so I appreciate that from y'all. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.